Morning. Great. Got some participants and some attendees. Oh, look, everybody's streaming in. Wonderful news. Thanks very much for attending. Sorry for the slight delay. I'll press on. You are very welcome. Let's see who we've got. Ah, yes. Hello, fantastic. That is great. Now I'm going to put this on a screen share so you can see what's going on here. I'm going to try and make this as participatory as I can so that you can, raise hands or do whatever you do. And there's a bit of a poll thing in the middle. And so anyway, you can get involved. Please do write down your chat questions and then I will kind of moderate it and, that should work. So just one second, I'm just tidying up something here. Good, all right, fabulous. So today's webinar is about influence. It's about upping your impact. After I'd written that, it occurred to me that it sounds a bit like a carry-on movie, up your impact, but clearly, no, it isn't. So I'm going to share. I think I do this by sharing my screen. I'm trying to remember what I did before. A month is clearly a long time. And I'm just trying to make sure that I've got this right. So if I've got the screen on, and I put this on here, this should help. Just got one issue though, which is that I now can't see. You enjoy the music for a minute. I shall just figure some little thing out here. Let's see. Slow down, too fast. You got to make a moment last. Just get down, come on, slow. Lucy, I can hear that you said can you see all of my screen or just the presentation, Lucy? Thank you for your patience, everybody. Sorry about this. Cool. Okay, great. That's cool. All right, so let's make a start. This should be fine now. Good. All right. Thank you very much for attending. I will move on with this now. So, first thing to say on upping your impact is, do you want to be at the heart of your business decision making? Is this something that you actually aspire to doing? And if it is, how do you think you're going to get there? So if you've got an ability to raise your hand on this Zoom thing that you've got open, can you raise your hand? I'll see if I can see it. We can just test this out. Oh, thank you very much. Oh, yes, and again and again and again. Oh, lovely. All right, yes, thank you. Brilliant. Okay, so you want to be the heart of the decision making of your business. Okay, next one down. Do you want greater autonomy over your work, and do you want greater autonomy over what your team is doing? Do you want to make decisions as to what you're doing and how you're doing it? More hands up. Get used to pressing the button. Thank you. Fantastic. That's great to see that when that comes in. Brilliant. Okay, and next question. Do you want to be seen more positively in your organization? Let's take it that is the answer yes. You might as well carry on raising your hands. No, you got used to it. Well done. Okay, fantastic. All right, good. Thank you. So, why do we need to increase skills in influence? Well, there's a very good reasons for that. Let me start to explain them to you. All right. So, how do things get done in business? This is the big question. When you think about how things get done and how they things get prevented from being done, when you have great ideas, and when can you execute them, when do you find you can't, what actually stops your plans being implemented and what gets them through, you'll probably find that the answer is people. Because business is people. It's a complete mantra of mine. It's become that over the last few years. It's just something I think because of how it's the businesses, what we live in, and people form that business. It's almost like the sea we swim in, the air we breathe. We kind of can't. Fish can't see the sea, and we can't see the air, and businesses sometimes can't see the people. So really important to remember that this isn't some sort of softy skill you're talking about. This is actually learning how the mechanics of the business really works, and that's why it's so important. So some people say it's not really worth learning these skills because, surely everybody understands about people. We're all people. We don't need to learn about them. We know it instinctively. And anyway, it's not part of my job. That's HR or that's something else. But obviously, it really isn't. I say that knowing how to empower people and harness them to your cause is arguably the most valuable thing you can ever learn about business. Incredibly important and very, very powerful for you making your working life, whatever it is you want it to be. And obviously we spend so many hours at work. It'd be really good to get out of it whatever it is we took the job to get out of it in the first place, and to do whatever it was we wanted to do when we took the job. So we're really not taught about how the machine of business works. And I think it's a real shame, because when we do understand that business really is those people, and understanding how to get them to work better together is like understanding how to get a machine to work better together. And because we have to be working together, we're not working in isolation. That sort of thing is really important. And if you like, influence is like knowing how to turn the handle of the machine to make it work. But of course, you're actually working those cogs. You've got to understand how the cogs work in the machine in order to create the output that you want out of it. So it's an incredibly core skill. Even more so today, and I'll go into that a little bit more. Why also do we need to? Well, secondly, we've got limited resources in all businesses and limited budgets. And even if companies grow, it seems that budgets don't necessarily do so too. And so we're all struggling for the same resources. And that could be anything from people's time, people's attention, people's skills, money, anything. But all of those are limited, and you're up against other people who are also wanting those skills. They also want senior attention, or they want to be part of something, or whatever it happens to be. So you need to know how to be influential to be able to show them that this is really something that can empower them as well as working for you. So you have to learn how to be useful to other people, extremely useful to other people, because it's that usefulness which is actually influential. Which is a good thing, really, because it's not an abusive thing. You are offering them something genuinely that benefits them. And that's obviously something that's going to work really, really well. And that doesn't matter where you're working within the organization, what department you're in. It doesn't matter whether you're in a large business or a small business, whether you're in legal, as a lot of them people here who have registered for this webinar are, or some of them from research and planning. Also, same difference. We all need to be able to secure our fair share, at least, of the limited resources that will help our ideas progress in the business. There is an instinct to be impartial, and as I say, I think most of the people on this webinar either come from legal or come from research and a marketing and planning background. And definitely if you come from a legal background or a research background, traditionally, there's always been the emphasis on trying to be impartial. And that's what both of those disciplines have prided themselves on, that kind of absolute objectivity, being able to provide a variety of cases that, will provide information and from which people can make decisions. What's happening today is actually that we need to be taking a step up. Now, my background actually is in research. It's only been, this year really that I've been involved at all with the legal profession. But it's quite interesting for me to see that quite a lot of what the research industry has gone through, the market research industry has gone through, is actually what the legal department industry is going through now. And that is the need to work out what you're going to be. Are you going to be a provider of information? Or are you going to be an assistant with a decision making? So you're really going to lead that decision making? Are you going to take a seat at the decision making table and be a strategist and be a real strong advisor and put forward a solution that you back because of all the expertise and all of the learning and the facts that you have behind you? Now, the research industry had to do this quite a few years, a couple of decades or so at least ago, probably two. And what has happened with the research industry is also threatening the legal industry, and that is that if you choose I'd like to provide information on a number of options, that actually is now more and more going to be taken over by either offshore or by AI. So that role is under threat. It's also not a role where you're ever going to get a lot of budget or wherever you're going to be able to develop the careers of people so that they're hugely satisfied. So it really is make your choice. And if you want to be a leader in your department, your company, your industry, your profession, what you need to do is to take this side and start to learn how to build those arguments and have the courage to stand behind one and say that's the business solution. Now, obviously, you've got all the information as well. It's not the same as just saying, I'm only going to offer you this, I'm never going to talk about anything else. But there's a lot more than just saying this seems like a good research or legal case. This also is about understanding what the business needs so that you can provide a good business case, which also means you need to step out of that department in order to be able to make the best solution recommendations. Now, another reason why this is incredibly important is that people really only want to work with, and they're only interested in working with people that they want to work with, and that is because the power of hierarchy is weakening, even within traditional companies, even within areas which touch upon the legal profession, for example, and definitely within research and has been for decades. The idea that you invite someone to a meeting because you're supposed to, and you don't invite anybody else that isn't within your the list of people that have to be invited according to the way that the process has to go, doesn't really happen anymore. People work with who they want to work with, and that's the person who they find useful, and that's the person who they find has helped them with their ambitions, by which you can say ambition with a small a or ambition with a big A. It's really about just helping them move forward in whatever it is they're trying to do. And they will recruit those people to the cause, and you get an opportunity to be influential. If you're not seen in that way, then your involvement in the project or the work will be delayed until it just has to be, we have to get them in anyway. That's not very good for you, because you want to be able to have an influence. And as we all know, having spoken now to the legal profession and knowing from experience with the research profession and also hearing from colleagues there, when you're brought in too late, there's only a limited job that you can do. It really affects whether or not you can do, a really great job. You also are limited as to the scope of the work that you can do if you're brought in too late. For example, if you're brought in just to test out something, to test out some ideas, so in the case of legal, to check that the contracts are right, to check things. Research is the same. If you're brought in to check things, there's only so much you can do. But if you're involved at the beginning, you can start to help scope the whole project. And that means that you'll have greater influence on the whole project, but it also means that you'll have greater autonomy in terms of how you are working, what it is that you need to do, how you do it, the timing, everything. And you're making more of a contribution to the project, and you're being recognized for that, which of course is fantastic and very rewarding, and that's the way that people want to work. Now, importantly, like I said, the resources things, they're usually only a certain number of seats at the table, whether they're real or virtual. So if you want to have an impact, you're going to have to fight for your seat. And if you are prepared to do that, then you need to learn how to basically empower others and influence others to be able to show them how much value you can offer them in terms of moving forward. And both in research and in legal, there is always a concern that that you guys or us, we will come in and we will start to say no. And that's even more, they get even more reluctant to bring us in as time goes on, because they get more wedded to their ideas, and then they don't want anyone to stop that train moving forward. But of course, as you all know, if you bring them at the beginning, then there's not necessarily less likely to be a kind of big no and full stops and handbrakes at the end. But that's easy for us to say, difficult for them to accept. So we need to show them how valuable we can be and how we can be empowering rather than closing down. So very important that. Excellent. Okay, so let's have a look. This is a McKinsey study that was done, which basically shows why it is it's so important for us to have greater personal skills in business. And this is their estimate of the amount of hours, the increase in the number of hours between 2016 and 2030 in terms of what it is that what we will need. So we will need an increase in social and emotional skills to the value of 24% more by 2030. And that, of course, is because we're going to be collaborating, we're going to be influencing each other, and things are not going to go by rote. It's not going to be hierarchically decided. Things are going to happen because teams come together to do them. And of course, how useful you are is how influential you are and how likely you are to be able to be involved in those teams that are doing things. So really important. Obviously, we've also got higher cognitive skills, and I suppose that's what I'm saying here is you've also got this idea that you've got to be able to think strategically, you've got to be able to think from a business perspective. Not at all surprising here, the technological skills are way up, but that's probably the subject of another webinar, not this one. So yes, the rise of technology, I've mentioned this, I probably won't go into too much detail about this one. But yeah, so this is, I think the statistics are quite, they're quite horrible actually. I think it's something like 22% of the jobs that legal professionals do, the prediction is will be farmed out to AI by 2030. Everything's by 2030. And it's a huge prediction. And of course, that means that, there's no hiding at the bottom. You've got to move up. You can't stay where you are because the tide is rising. It's like global warming. You've got to keep moving up. So yeah, I should be playing Curtis Mayfield's Moving On Up at this point, but I'm sure you get the picture. So very important for us to keep on doing that. Frankly, it's also more exciting. Something I've done all my career is just keep on moving. And try not to be afraid of it. Just keep playing with it. See if you can move forward. It's an exciting place to be once you get a bit used to living outside your comfort zone. It's not as hard as you think it will be. So yeah, give it a go. So we need to understand about people, gatekeepers, facilitators, and they're very important. And we need to understand what makes them tick, because they will be the key to our influence. I wonder if you could write in your chat box, what are the benefits of being more influential in your organization? What would your working life be like if you were more influential? See if we can put some of those in there. Okay, that's good. Yeah, So you'd be able to, come up with more, you'd be able to fulfill your ambitions, you'd be able to be promoted more, life, you'd be happier, able to do more interesting work. Yeah, it's cool. Good, absolutely. That is what people have said. Be recognized, absolutely. Yes, isn't it more rewarding to know expertise is being used? It really is. It's fantastic. All of those things are great. It's just soul destroying sometimes when you come in and you do things, once again, talking about my research experience, but they are so parallel, that, you've come in, you've done a great, what we call debrief. You come in and it's great, it's marvelous, you've thought something through, and then for some reason it doesn't, the business doesn't take it on, and there's lots of political reasons why that sometimes is. Isn't it satisfaction to see the business doing the right thing? I mean, absolutely, because it's soul destroying when you know that this is the answer, but quite often because they've already gone so far in thinking about it in a different way that they're just bringing you in at the last minute, and they really don't want to go back and change everything. So they kind of make excuses as to why they don't change it according to what you've said, even though you know that this is the best solution for the business. Yeah, so you don't really want to be there. You want to be where you're going, business changed direction because of what I said, and now that initiative's going to be fabulously successful. And we all want to be there. It's the right thing to want to do, to go to work, to be honest, isn't it? I mean, there's nothing shameful about it. In fact, it's something you should be proud of. So fabulous, great. But I have to ask you, what are the challenges? What are the challenges about being more influential? Let's see what you've got for this one. So, keep typing. So it's mainly people say pushback. Yeah. So and you can become a bottleneck. Absolutely. Yes, you can. You can become a bottleneck. There can be a pushback. There can be a pushback. Yeah, and you get bogged down the task and you don't deliver on the strategy. So very difficult to try and raise your. Yeah, all of these things, coming in and think faster, lovely, all these things. So not having a seat at the table, so the issues are not identified early enough, like I mentioned before, and then you become a problem, and you're a bottleneck, and you're a black hat, and that's a difficult role to play, and you don't want to play that role either. So all of those sorts of things. Sometimes it also too much of a perfectionist. Absolutely, maybe that's what you're doing. And I think you have to think about whether what you're putting forward is a solution that's right for the business and the team. And you've got to think about, if you're being influential, it can be demotivated. So if you are looking at the business and the team, and we're trying to empower the business and the team, then sometimes the absolute perfect answer is not the thing that will move things forward. And so that's something that we need to think about. So being right is, I know it's a very hard thing for lawyers to understand, and a hard thing for researchers to accept too, but being right is not all there is. There's being useful, and being useful, frankly, always trumps being right, unless you're really, really dangerously wrong. So this is where the perfection thing can actually trip us up. So I'm very glad you brought that up. Yes. Very useful. It's probably a subject of a whole other, in fact, we make a great webinar, the advantages and disadvantages of perfectionism. A fascinating subject. But because people want to move on, the perfectionism can hold people back, and that can stop you being invited to the table to the very last minute. So we need to be able to think of things in a slightly different way, a way that says, how can I help people move forward faster than they were before? And one of the things that Lucy, my business manager, and I say is, will it make the boat go faster? And if it does, then we are bang on to it. And if it doesn't, we will lower its priority. Being valuable is key, absolutely. How to demonstrate the value which you bring, absolutely. So, both of the audiences that I'm talking to have the potential to frustrate others enormously. And that's why we have to be really careful about it, because we bring real value and the truth. But we've got to use the truth very carefully. And not everybody wants it all the time. Obviously, I'm not talking about not telling the truth, but we need to be careful how we manage it. It's a very powerful thing. As you guys know, that's probably why you all went into it. All right, so let's have a think about your influence. I've got a table here, which I'll show you. And this is one of the, when you registered for this, it means that Lucy's got you on the list of people to send resources to. So the resources include a recording of this video, which obviously show to anybody you like, and also the deck, and also this table, which you can work with. So I'd like you to have a think about how far up the influence table do your stakeholders think your department is. That's different from how influential you think you are, because if you think about it, influence is actually about what other people think of us. We can't say we're influential if in actual fact other people don't find us so. We're clearly then not. So that's why it says, do your stakeholders think your department is? So let's start at the bottom. Just hope nobody's down at the bottom here. But hey, look, everybody has to start somewhere. So maybe, let's hope you're not, but there you go. This would be level 1 on influence. It should be level -1. You are a resource. That's what they would say about you. They go, oh yes, that legal department or that bunch of researchers, they're a resource. They provide data. The score I've got on the right-hand side is the effect on motivation within your team, on performance, and on business success as the business as a whole. So if instead of a proper functioning legal department or a great research insights department, they've just got a data resource, not going to help the business very much. And I'm sure that there'd be researchers and legal bodies, people out there saying, well, I wish you'd come and tell them that, because I've definitely met some people who have been in this position. But you can get yourself out of that, even if you're down at the bottom. The second one is, I've got level 3, clearly it should be level 2. I renumbered these, but I didn't renumber the ones on the right, sorry, on the left rather. Okay, so this is team member. So this is level 2, team member. You bring knowledge, and that's great. Now, knowledge is a sort of data interpreted, which is fantastic, but clearly not enough in today's world. Think about it, how fast are you going to be able to push the boat or row the boat if you're bringing knowledge? Yes, definitely good. Not good enough in a competitive environment. And what happens when you're not good enough is that you've got low levels of autonomy, you've got lower budgets, you've been invited to meetings later, etc. So it's not really a place where you want to be hugely. The next level up, which I've got as 4, is really 3. A key team member. Are you a key team member where they go, I don't really want to start this project without at least knowing so-and-so is available down the line. Now, to do that, you're providing wisdom. Now, wisdom is knowledge in context and also with experience of either the same sort of thing or a parallel thing that you then bring to the party. And once you start bringing that sort of perspective, you are moving the boat forward without any doubt. And you have an effect on motivation. Obviously, if you're doing that, you're going to feel more motivated. The business performance and success is going to be better. Budgets are going to be higher. All sorts of things are going to happen. You're going to be invited sort of slightly sooner into the project, or at least they'll mention to you that it's happening rather than bring you in the very last minute. Good. So right at the end here, this is a core influencer. You're providing direction and strategy at this point. And that is, of course, fantastic. Now, you need a fair number of additional skills to your core skills before you're able to do that, because it is a step up. And it involves, understanding more about the business, more about people, being able to, more about the projects, understanding how to put your case so that it feels like an enabling thing for them rather than a constraining thing. But if you can do all of those sorts of things, then that is incredibly valuable to you, to the company, It allows you, as I've said, to have a greater say over how you work and what you do and how you report, report in, how you interact with other people. Your budgets are going to be higher. You're going to be able to recruit better people. You're going to be able to keep them because they're going to be excited about what they're doing for all of the reasons that you've just given me. About the pleasure of seeing your expertise being used. So this is where you want to be, really. So my question to you, hang on a second. My question to you, I'm going to do a poll now. So if I can get there we go, hang on. Okay, click. All right, I'm going to launch a poll. You have to answer, how influential do your stakeholders think you are? Now, these go by numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, but they're actually kind of in reverse order. I mean, it's the right number, but number 1 is at the bottom, if you like. Number 1 is the resource, just providing the information, through to number 4, which is a core influencer. So they're visually not, so I'm having a problem. I can't just see my mouse for some reason. I shall move it and hope I can see it. No, not there. It's completely invisible. Stay with me for a minute. I will go up to polling. Down again. There. Sometimes it should do it. Nope. I might have to hold because I can't see my mouse has become invisible. Thank you. That's a good idea. Why didn't you just type it in? Excellent idea. All right. Why don't you type it in? Just type me in a number. We won't do the poll. We'll type it in the number. Cool. All right. Now I've just got to get rid of this poll off my screen, which is another matter. Soup. And cool. Okay. Okay, 4 core team member, excellent. 4 core team member, great. Anybody coming up into being a team member? Cool, and then it depends on the stakeholders. Some understand and value more than others, and therefore it'll be 1, 2, 3, and rarely 4. 4 is kind of a stretch, but you can get there, and as I say, we kind of need to really get there. So very significant. All right, thank you very much for that. That's excellent. Cool. So let's have a look at the problems that people say that they have. Okay, cool. We'd like to provide a business solution, but I'm not sure it's seen as our role. How would others take it? Well, actually, that's what a couple of you have actually already said, which is that there might be some pushback to us doing this. Have you got any experience of this? Do you want to share any of this on the chat? Cool. So it looks like, yeah, for some stakeholders, there is some. All right. So some stakeholders, there's a bit of a pushback as to the role in the business, as whether or not providing business solutions is really what you're supposed to be about. Well, one of the things I'd like to encourage you to do, and I'm building a model by doing this, is to have a think about your department and why it exists. This is defining the positioning. Now, you might think that that's actually an incredibly easy thing to do. Surely we all know why we go to work and what our department is supposed to do. Otherwise, how on earth would we do it every day? But actually, it's not as easy as all that. I'd like you to think about a sentence that describes what your department, what it's supposed to do. Oh, cool. Yeah, that's cool. Let's have a think about why your department exists in the modern world of business. So I'd like you to see if you could, you don't have to write the whole sentence, but I'd like you to have a think about what the verb is if you were to write such a sentence. Our purpose, our role is to what? What's the verb? Is it to inspire? Is it to drive, to direct, to inform, to support, to explore, what actually is that verb? It would be really good to see some verbs written down on that chat panel, because it's that's going to make a huge difference to how you do your work. So we have partner. Okay, that's interesting. A partner with the business. That's really interesting, because you know what that suggests to me? It's not right to protect. Lovely. I had that from somebody at a talk the other day, from the legal people, to protect. To partner, interesting. The interesting thing about partner is especially the way it's written there, and this is not at all a criticism. It's a very interesting mindset, because the mindset it reveals to me is that the objectivity of your profession and your department is so strong that you see yourselves almost as outside the business, because of course we can't partner with ourselves. So we're talking about the business as another entity separate from ourselves. And obviously that incredibly strong, objective, informed point of view is incredibly valuable. But it's interesting how it has in your mind suggested that there's the business and then there's you, and we partner together. I mean, the partnership is fantastic. And obviously the separation, is necessary in your mind. So just quite interesting. Okay, yes. All right. So you can, I don't know if you can all see each other's chat, but if you can't, and I didn't set it up that way, so it's more the business that sees us as outside. Yeah, and researchers suffer the same thing, because it's a point of judgment, and that's your kind of job, is to judge obviously the legal status, but also the validity of their thinking and their work. Then there is we come in as judges, and it's always a pretty difficult position to hold. But we're going to have to find a way to compartmentalize our minds, so that we have that judgment and that objectivity, but we're also able to step inside the business and be able to build a case for them. So rather than leaving them with, this is your judgment and now I'm off, and I know that we don't probably work like that, but it's more of a case of but more of a case of being able to work with them, with our skills, to be able to develop a really fabulous solution, and that's great. Yeah, especially skill set seen as a threat sometimes to government space anyhow. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Look, we all deal with seeming to be a threat, and how to deal with seeming a threat is part of what I train in developing professional business relationships, because I think it is really valid, and I don't think we talk about it very much. We talk about maybe how to step up and have conversations. We don't talk about what happens if you, just by your very title, just by breathing, you are a threat to people, and how they respond to that, and therefore the role they allow you to play. And it's incredibly important to learn how to deal with that. Anyway, that's no matter. Cool. All right, so problem number 2 that you might have is we'd like to provide a bit of solution, but we're not used to going that far. Perhaps we just better provide all the options, information, and kind of step back from there. I know that's quite a common problem that people have, or a view that they have, not at all unusual. So, how do we deal with this if we're going to be more influential? And that is that providing a problem-solving mindset. And as I was kind of referring to a second ago, that is incredibly important, so that we're not seen as the black hats, so that we are always helping move the business forward. So the business have moved forward more after we've left the room than before we went in it. Now, that's a big ask when we're in judge and jury role. Yeah, absolutely. So look like you're stepping back, but stay across it to ensure it evolves in the right direction. Yes. Just think about, how can I help this team not be right, but move forward safely? If I'm thinking about from a legal perspective, and there's a slight difference in those. Of course, you have to move. I understand the protect thing and the guidance thing and all that, and that's fantastic. But it's still, when we think about protecting, is kind of like a holding back energy, if you like. The business is always going to find that frustrating if you're not moving forward with them. So somehow it's now going to need to be the case that we find solutions for them to move forward. We use all of that fabulous knowledge and experience and wisdom to help them move forward so they're further forward, not just safer. Because they can be safe by stopping. We can all be safe by stopping. Well, theoretically, though, there'd be some who would say that you always risk from not acting in as much as you risk from acting. So that's always another challenge. Anyway, so all good, problem solving. And if you have problem solving and a right positioning, and when you're dealing with your positioning, I probably didn't talk about this enough, but you're dealing with your positioning, you need to be able to deliver against it. So you need to be able to say, okay, this is who we are. Now, a position is something you do. It's not something that you just say. So if you're going to do that positioning, it means that's what you do, that's what you focus on. And have a think about whether you can in any way take that protection and make it more enabling and make it move further forward in some way, because it's still quite a withholding kind of thing. And obviously, businesses need breaks. They do. You can't just have them charging about doing crazy things and making terrible mistakes and going bust and all that sort of stuff. So, it's very valuable as it is. So problem solving. Next one. We're not invited in at the beginning, so we don't get the whole picture. So how on earth can we come up with a business solution? Well, the answer to that really is being proactive. So this is about being a step ahead so that you know what's going on and you have formed the relationships, which is the next circle, in order to be able to involve yourself in the project sooner. Now, this is one of the potential downsides of influence, is that you have to metaphorically, obviously you have to really do it as well, but metaphorically you have to leave your desk. So you have to leave your area of expertise and move into somebody else's and move and be aware and be on the front foot rather than the back foot being reactive. And that takes time and energy. And, I don't think we should underestimate that when you're moving forward like this, there are other things that you'll need to let go of doing. And I've been working with some companies, large retailers actually. We've been working with them on their role, and we found that, they can get excited about moving forward and doing more of the strategy and the thinking. But when faced with, well, what are you going to let go so that you can do that? That becomes actually a harder thing to do. But that, of course, is where the technology comes in, and where recruiting more junior people comes in, etc., so that you are set up as a department to be able to have everybody who can be doing the real leadership training, thinking, doing that thinking and being proactive, because it takes time to get involved in projects you weren't involved in before, at a level that you weren't involved in before. And it won't happen unless you can get rid of something else that you're doing, because it's just not possible. We often find ourselves at odds with the team. It's frustrating when our ideas don't get the backing that they deserve. And I think we've all had that. Having a few informal conversations with coffee helps to understand what's on the horizon, discuss new. Yes, keep in touch with positivity all the way through. So this is about professional relationships, and indeed the conversations and coffees and all of those sorts of things are really incredibly empowering and powerful. So let's have a bit of a think about communicating and behaving in the way that empowers others. Now, I don't know if any of you've been to the talks that I've done or the other webinars that I've done, when I tend to include this. So if you have, let's hope you've maybe just forgotten it for a minute. Well, I'll repeat it. There is a fabulous lady called Professor Amy Cuddy at Harvard University, and she has done some great work in terms of trust. And what she says is incredibly important for people who are clever and whose careers are based on the fact that they're clever and they're delivering their knowledge and their ability to analyze the situation, etc. Because we tend to go into a relationship or with our cleverness up front. And while definitely it is our cleverness that is really appreciated in the working environment, what Amy Cuddy has proved through her research is that we first need to feel like we're on the same side as them, or they won't respond well to what we have to say, and they won't necessarily trust us. what she says is that you have to gain trust before you can impress people. And for us, we might say impress people with our knowledge, or that people be impressed and take on board what we're saying in the way we want them to. So there's a little step before that. If I remind you to think back to all those cogs in the machine, don't forget we're dealing with people. We think we're dealing with law, with facts and figures, and we're dealing with people. So the first thing to make the wheels go round is trust. If we go back in time to whenever this was first invented, which is the handshake. I don't know if anybody knows why how the handshake evolved as a greeting, but there is a real story behind it, a little story behind it. I'll let you type, but the actual answer to that is that when we used to go around carrying weapons, I don't know, let's take it was medieval times. Not that the women were wearing swords, of course, so let's not interpret history as a purely masculine thing. But when men came to meet men and were allowed into the tent or not allowed into the tent, the question was, do you have any weapons? You must leave the weapons at the door. And so you would extend your hand to show, I have no weapons, and the other person would extend their hand to show that they had no weapons, and that's how the handshake evolved. Now, and also, obviously, it's a sign of commitment to the other as well. Yeah, great point. Because actually, it's a physical connection. We're not really allowed, I suppose, in some such situations we are. But if we've only just meeting someone, we can't go in and go on a business meeting and give people great big hugs. Maybe they do that in France. But, we don't do that in Australia. Actually, having said that, you've got some French names here. I wasn't being personal there. I was actually thinking my experience in France and Spain, because I'm half Spanish, and all the kissing that goes on with people that you don't know. But anyway, it's a very powerful thing because we are skin to skin, and that's actually quite an intimate thing that we do, but it's a very personal thing. Hugs not French. The kisses are a French thing, though. Cool. Anyway, I'm a big hugger anyway. But anyway, so the handshake, that's what it's supposed to show. Excellent. So let's have a look at, what I was going to say was, so what we need to do as well as the handshake is to be able to talk to people in a way that they feel like we are on their side. And what you need to do to be able to do that is to understand what motivates them. And when you've got that, what sort of style of person they are. So are they someone who's rushing ahead with everything? Are they someone who's steady and cautious? Are they someone who's very emotional? Are they someone who's incredibly factual? If we think about what they are, then this is a fantastic way to be able to then develop our language. So each of those types of people in the training that I have might have a language that's more appropriate. And when we speak in that language or we behave in that way, we'll find that we do, that the other person feels like we're on their side. We will do them no harm. And they start to say, I really think, this is my sort of person. I click with this person, which then translates into, they must have my interests at heart. They must be thinking in the same way that I do. Therefore, I better listen because they're going to be helping me with my course. So it just fabulously opens people up. You then carry on to present whatever idea you're presenting to them or thinking you're presenting to them in their sort of language and terms. You're not changing the facts in any way at all, but you're presenting it in a way that makes sense to them and touches them and feels like home to them. And they're much more likely to get on board with it and to engage with you. So it's a really powerful thing. And the people that I work with experience this every day, like from the minute they leave the training. And months and months later, they're still calling me, telling me about the conversations they've had and how things have changed. So all very good. Now, so the fourth one is professional relationships. Now, out of this, you get influence and you get alignment when you're proactive and you've got a great relationship. You're already on board, you're aligned with things, you're moving forward together. If you've got professional relationships and you've got an appropriate positioning, then suddenly you become really relevant. You get authority from the positioning that you have, and also from the fact that you are solving problems or opening opportunities for them. And you really become a leadership person if you're acting proactively and you're problem solving. So all of these things all come to bear, as well as providing you influence. So that's all super. Now, what I have here is something which obviously is in the deck, and I think Lucy's going to separate it out for you so you can find it easily. Now, these are four, oh, good gracious, is it nearly 12:30? How do we do this? You might know you're even here. It's marvellous. I'm chatting away. Good. So these are the four tables, which basically have levels going up just like you had before. And what you need to do with this is have a little look at them all, and you can score yourself on how high you are on all of this. Then on another sheet of paper, you've got this one, which is how you plot your graph, and you do your diagnosis. So what positioning score have I got? How does that impact what my goals? What would a top score enable me to do? And then what is the main challenge, and what's the first thing I'm going to do to improve it? So you've got an action plan, and all of this comes together. Any questions? I have run over time, of course. You chuck them on there, and I will just carry on here with what's available to help you. Oh, good. That's super. Lovely. Thank you so much. It's got a few bits and pieces extra, but not so much. Thanks very much for everybody for attending. Anybody still here? I should carry on also, because for the people, I do know a number of people are just going to have the video of this. So that's great. Thank you very much all for attending and for engaging with all your fabulous comments. That's fantastic. And yeah, best of luck. Have a great day. So I'll just carry on with this for the recording. So what's available to you on the journey that you might take to influence is positioning. You can have a look at Simon Sinek's Start With Why. That's great. Hi, thanks very much, Bob. Start With Why, facilitate a workshop on what you do and why you do it and what the verbs are, as we talked about. Identify what the implications are. Proactivity, there's a book there for you and questions to ask yourself. In terms of problem solving, identifying what you know about the business, because you'll need to know something about the business to be able to solve the problem. So do you know enough to be able to make any recommendations there and stand by them? And that sort of commitment. Also understanding how to present your case, which is the pillars system, which I teach. And then professional relationships, interpreting everything through people. There's a book there for you as well to look at. And here's some understanding about what I do, which is, I know that most of you have actually probably been to the webinars and recordings before, so you'll know this, but I work with companies to increase their collaboration and influence, mainly around building powerful business relationships, either focusing on generating revenue generation for professionals or on influential teams. And basically the work stems from there. I've got a number of programs running at the moment. And these are the resources that Lucy will send you. You will be asked to sign up. That's so it doesn't get stopped by your server. Cool. Thank you so much for your nice comments, everybody. That's lovely. Lovely to spend that time with you. Thanks for taking part. That's great. If you can think of any way to improve this webinar, please let me know. And if you'd like some help in doing any of this and increasing your influence in business, please let me know too. And that's it. Thank you very much indeed.